Welcome back into Good Parenting. I'm your host, Matt Bubala. Joining us right now is Sarah Gibson. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor and an advisor to something called My Worry Box. On the box, it says recommended for ages 7 and up.
Mhm.
So, what happens around the age of 7 that we start to need something like this? Is it a basic kids are getting to that age where we're not talking to them as much, or is it just they're at a stage of their life where worries are starting to become real to them and it's more than just a hug and a kiss from mom or dad?
Yeah, I'd say around the age 7 is when they're becoming more intuitive, they're becoming more insightful of things around them. They're probably doing more social activities. They're in school. As we know, what is seventh grade, like second or third grade. So everything's starting to become more clicky, and so I think it's just a right age where kids are starting to kind of personalize and internalize some of the things and situations around them.
As a counselor, you work with kids all the time. Can you give us a gauge on what the things are that kids are most worried about these days? Is it bullying? Is it all the technology and the terror that comes with all that you have to do now for your friendships and cliques and things like that?
I would say bullying is a big one. For a 7-year-old, it's more so it can be fears of something happening to your family, not doing good in school, pleasing your teacher, pleasing your parents, an obvious kids liking you, the socialness of everything. So I don't know about technology in terms of. I mean, I think Facebook and the texting and stuff is becoming an issue. I don't know if 7-year-olds are necessarily engaging in that too much.
Hopefully not. I mean, I'm
Hopefully
sure
not.
some are.
But I'm sure the older kids are, and that's becoming a big issue in itself.
I guess what I'm wondering then with my worry box and any time that there's communication involved,
Hmm.
with the kids that you see, how often is it a lack of communication that is causing the problems that bring kids in to see you, whether they're worried about bullying, worried about I don't have friends, I don't like the way I look, I'm dealing with weight, all the things kids start going through that they come to see you about. What percentage of the time would you say if the parents and the kids communicated a little better, these wouldn't be issues?
A huge percent. A huge percent. I would say 80 or 90%.
Really?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because a lot of times what happens is when kids come to see me, it's kind of like the kids come in and the parents are kind of like, okay, I'll be back in 45 minutes to pick them up. And then after a few sessions, like, no, actually, you need to come in. You
Right.
need to be a part of this. You need to hear what your child is saying, and you need to be a part of the solution. Not just here in these 45 minutes, but at home and in definitely other areas.
All right, so we know there's communication problems when kids get to 7, 8, 9, when they really start dealing with issues.
Hmm.
So I guess the basic question is, are we as parents lacking communication with our children from the start? Or is it falling off? Are the kids starting to reach these ages where we're just not talking to them as much? They're not as open. We don't have as much time. Or is it basically you think we don't know how to communicate in a parent-child relationship and it catches up with us when they hit these ages?
I would say a little bit of both. I think, it's kind of situational. It kind of depends on the family dynamic. I think certainly when kids do get a little bit older, we kind of think, well, they're doing well, they're okay, and we probably do kind of um, not communicate as much. But I think the children as well kind of have a harder time reaching out because they're getting older and they're trying to feel more independent. So they may not be, reaching out as much as they should as well.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I guess, when we say communication, we have to communicate. It sounds, oh boy, now we got to talk. We got to be touchy feely. But it doesn't really mean all that, does it? Because
Mm-mm.
it's funny. I was just talking on the show last week. We recently sat down as a family. There's 6 of us, and we played Uno Attack. It's this
Hmm.
card game, and it's a lot of fun. And we had the game sitting there for over a year and never opened it up. And we finally opened it up. And I was recounting the tale and saying, it was amazing. The 6 of us were sitting around a table looking at each other instead of the 6 of us on a couch looking at a wall or looking at a screen. A lot of
Hmm.
times family time is a movie or a TV show or these things where we're not facing each other.
Hmm.
And while we played Uno Attack, we weren't talking about the great mysteries of life or solving any world issues.
Hmm.
We were just being together.
Hmm.
And my guess would be you'd tell me that's going to go a long way towards opening up the communication.
Absolutely, because your children are feeling comfortable with you. They're used to that interaction, so it's not as scary to go up to your parent if you have more of those situations to say, "Hey, I'm anxious about this," or "I'm really worried about this," or "I'm having a problem at school," because you're building that that relationship by doing these things with them, even if it's sitting with them and watching TV, or just building that bond and that closeness is going to make them feel a lot more comfortable coming to you with these issues. Absolutely.
In our society today, in our economic climate today, so many families are either broken apart by divorce or certain things, or a two-income family because we all have to work and things like that. So there's very little time to actually get together. What do you recommend for families? How do we make sure that we're putting enough time in the areas that we need to put time in, not just driving them to sporting events or, working late or different things
Mhm.
like that?
Well, I'm definitely a big believer in quality versus quantity, and even if it's a drive to a baseball practice, if you can, utilize that time to talk about things and just make the most of it. Or I'm a big advocate of date night, if just once a week you can go out for coffee and hot cocoa or go out to dinner once a night with your child. I think that that can really go a long way. So just more about the quality time that you're spending with them, not necessarily how often as well, can be a
So,
big thing.
so maybe we should have rules like when we're with our children, there's no checking our phone for emails, no
Sure.
reading the paper. Our
Sure.
kids shouldn't have an iPod in front of them when we're traveling together, things like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And at dinner, if you're going out to dinner, just having that conversation, because we can easily just the parents can talk to each other or the kids can, you know, play their games at the dinner table, and just even that can be a huge time for communication.
It's called My Worry Box. It's available at myworrybox.com, also on amazon.com. Sarah Gibson, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.